In this video, I'm going to talk about the company form of business. Now, the business can take different legal forms, but the company form is of more importance in this course because the discussion on recording, classifying, and summarizing the transactions is going to be discussed from the point of view of a company. So let's look at the contents of this section. We will discuss about what is a company, how do you distinguish it from the other forms of business. We'll talk about different types of companies. We'll specifically try to distinguish between private companies and public companies. And then we'll do a quick visual test. If you have to figure out if a given company falls into the category of private company or a public company, how would you do that? So let's get started. What is a company? Now, I like to clarify this question, answer this question using an analogy of a real person and an artificial legal person. Okay, so an artificial legal person is what the company is. A company is an artificial legal person. You and me, on the other hand, are real legal person. We are a real person, and there is a legal identity we have. All of us hold some nationality, citizenship. We have an identity card to say if we are a real person and so on. Okay, can we distinguish between the two? Using the analogy of a real person, I will try to illustrate to you why company is called an artificial legal person. Now, a real person is conceived through a biological process, and analogical to that, an artificial legal person, which is the company, it is conceived by the parents who are called promoters, and through a cognitive process, which is, all of us could become partners, and we want to start a business. That's a cognitive process of thinking about sector of the business, strategy for the business, where are we going to sell, marketing, and all of that. So it's a cognitive process taken by the promoters who set up the company. Now, when you have a child, you want to register the child so that it is recognized in the whatever national register of citizens. So you have to name your child. You have to tell the government. You go to a hospital, you do a birth registration. So you have to tell them the gender, date of birth, parents' name, address, religion, caste, and there are many other details which are required to register an individual in a country. Similarly, the company will need to be registered. You give a name to the company, and this name stays unique. It is registered. It is listed in a register of names of all the companies. You tell them who the parents are, the promoters. When the company is registered, when the company is born, the company has to have a registered address as well. And the reason for registration, now this is what is different between a real person and an artificial legal person. You have to also tell the government that this is why this artificial legal person is being created by the promoters. All right, we'll talk more about it as we move further. Now, an individual, a real person, belongs to a culture, follows some social practices. There are certain social norms, ethics and morals which you are bound by. You may or may not follow it, but there is a stated or unstated code of conduct which you have. Similarly, for an artificial legal person, which is the company, you have a memorandum of association and articles of association. These are two documents, two detailed documents which tell anybody this is what the company is called, this is the objective of this company, these are the people who will run the company. So all of that is in the memorandum of association. Then, in order to achieve the objectives given in the memorandum of association, how is the company going to function? How is the company going to take various decisions? Which person in the company is going to have what power? All of that is presented in a document called Article of Association. Now, don't worry about the details about these documents. I'm only trying to contrast between the cultural and social norms that a real person will have and an artificial legal person, the company, will have. Decision making is done by parents until till the time the real person is a minor. In case of a company, you never call a company an adult or a minor. The decision making is done by the promoters always, and there are more decision making bodies which I'll talk about in a bit. This individual, once becomes an adult, can enter into legal contracts, can enter into transactions, can start a business, can take admission in a school and college and so on. The person can be sued if this person does not follow the rules and regulations of the land, or if he violates any cultural norms, social norms, according to the laws of the land, the person can be sued. Similarly, an artificial legal person, the company, can also enter into contracts and can be sued, right? Now, the person, as I said, can transition into adulthood and then take the decisions for himself or herself. However, the company will always be dependent upon its promoters, and the promoters can further hire a team of management which can take decisions on the behalf of the company. Company will never come to life. Company will never take its own decisions. It's an artificial legal person. The real person is going to drive the artificial legal person here. Then for an individual, you have parents, you have guardians, you have relatives, friends, mentors, various parties, interested parties, which are interested in the good upbringing of this person, guiding this person, making sure the person succeeds. Likewise, for an artificial legal person, you have shareholders. These are the people who invest money in the company. Your parents invest money in you, for education and everything in the beginning. Likewise, shareholders invest their money in a company. You shareholders elect a board, as I said in the last video as well. They elect a board to run the company. It's like guardians of shareholders. Then the board elects a management to run day-to-day operations of the company, and then management further hires employees to do nitty-gritties, daily tasks, small things, big things in the company. So this is how the community of an artificial legal person is different from a real legal person. Then for a real legal person, you have law of the land. There are a number of laws regarding how you should behave, act, and so on. Likewise, there is Companies Act for companies. Then there are, if you think a little bit further, you have parent-child issues. There are ego issues. Children grow up, parents have expectations, all of that, right? All of us deal with that. Likewise, the issues between the shareholders, the promoters, the management, and the employees of the company, there are issues as well. And these issues are given a name which is called agency problem. So the agency problem basically states that you and me are investors in a company, but we don't run the company. Company is run by the management. Now, management should ensure that the company is run as we expect it to be run. Like parents would expect their children to behave and act and as per their desires, or pick up a career of their choice. So there is a conflict in the families as well. Likewise, there is a conflict in the company as well. The conflict is called agency problem. It's a big research area as well, but I'll not talk a lot about it here. Then you have, ethnicity and origin. A person comes from a specific community. It has, it is born in a country. It has an origin and all of those things. Likewise, based upon, you can relate the ethnicity of a real person to, a company. A company either being public sector company or a private sector company. That is kind of the ethnicity of a company. And I'm going to talk about these two types of companies in more detail. So I hope through this analogy you are able to understand what a company is as a legal person. It has an identity, which in the eyes of laws, is exists in the eyes of laws, and the company has certain rights, certain things that it can do. It can be sued and so on. Okay. Let me talk about now ethnicities of companies. Now, a company can be promoted by the government and cannot be promoted by the government. Government, we all understand, runs the company, elected government, and so on. So I take these two broad categories, and you may not find these categories, but I've found this way to better illustrate the categorization of the companies. If a company is promoted by the government, and I hope you now understand that promoted means the parent is the government. Government is the one who puts in all the money in upbringing of this child called a company. When government promotes the company, it's called a public sector company. Note these two words, public and sector. When you say public sector, government represents the public and public's money is with the government. Government puts the money in a company. Hence, it is going to be called a people's company or a public sector company. You never call it public company. It's called public sector company. Public sector refers to government sector. All right. On the other side, you have private sector company. Again, I'm using these two words together. When you segregate these two words, you use only private, it could mean something else. You use only public, it could mean something else. Private sector means it's not government, it's somebody else. It can be you and me, or any other real person, or artificial legal person also can invest in another company. So all of that which is not government, if they start a company, is going to be called private sector company. Examples. Now, public sector companies, ONGC, IOC, Indian Oil Corporation, Air India, BSNL, all these companies are government owned companies. So you can also call them government owned companies. Government holds more than 50%, at least 51% shares in these companies, meaning majority of investment is by the government. So government can take a decision. Whoever puts in more money has more votes on a decision that is made. More on that later. So the private sector company, the examples are Reliance Industries, Infosys, Make My Trip, Zomato. All these companies are private companies. Government has not put in money in these companies. Note that government might have put money, but it may only be 10% of the total money invested in, let's say, Infosys, right? That does not give government a right to take decisions in this company. So while the government can invest in any company, if the government owns more than 50%, only in that case you call a company a public sector company, right? So now let me deep dive into private sector companies. Private sector company may have two categories. First is called a private company. Note that I've removed the word sector here. And now when I use private and company together, in this company, you have private individuals who have invested money. And the slide says shares held, share in the ownership. Just understand it like that. I'll clarify the word share, in the future videos. But shares held by the private individuals means that private individuals like you and me can invest money in this company, and this company will be called a private company. For example, Make My Trip and Zomato. Okay, so let me go to second category, and then you will be able to contrast it to the private company. The second category is called public company. Note that I'm not using public sector company. I'm saying public company. What is a public company? When the shares means the investment, share in investment, the ownership is by general public. So see the contrast. So private individuals and public. What is private individual and what is general public? Private individual would be I talk to my friends, family, and say I want to start a company. Do you want to invest money in the company and become the owner, part owner of this company? That will be a private transaction, private individuals. But if I put out an advertisement in the newspaper saying, hey everyone, I'm starting a company, or I already have a company and I invite everybody to invest money in my company, then it would be I would be inviting general public. In the Companies Act, there is also definition of what is general public, which is that when you advertise, if you advertise to more than 50 people at a time, and these rules change from time to time. More than 50 people at a time, you call it a public invitation. And these private companies cannot do that public invitation. So you can't advertise in public, right? So you have to meet people individually and then raise money for your company, which is called private placement, by the way. Anyways, so this is the distinction between a private company and public company. So again, to summarize, there can be two broad categories of companies: promoted by government, not promoted by government. Within the category of not promoted by government, you have two categories: private companies and public companies. So we'll talk more about why distinction between private and public, and how do these two companies function differently. That's the next topic. So there are a number of legal distinctions in terms of what private company can do, cannot do, what public company can do, not do, and how these companies can be formed. Let me quickly run through some of the important points, major points. Now, in terms of shareholders, how many investors a company can have, there are different limits for the two types of company. That's one, and I'm just skipping through these. I don't want to spend more time on less important points. Name of the company: private limited company must be a fixed. So make my trip private limited. All the companies which have written private limited against their name are the private companies, right? On the other hand, the public companies do not need to write private, so they can just write limited. So Reliance Industries Limited. So you would see those in name: Reliance Industry Limited. There is no private written here, so it's a public company. On the other hand, Make My Trip Private Limited, right? So that's how you can distinguish between private and public company as well. Let's look at the name. What is the detailed name of the company? How do they mention it? And you can then identify if it's a private company or a public company. Then invite to public to invest, not allowed, allowed. I discussed that. Transferability of shares. So let me just quickly say that directors, women directors, all of these things, manager remuneration, these are various legal points, and there can be a list of tens of more points, but I don't want to get into that. The purpose of this slide is to tell you that these two companies are significantly different in terms of how they operate, what is allowed for this company to do, how should they function, and so on. There is significant amount of difference, and I'll upload some study material for you to go through that. But the important point from the point of view of this course is disclosures. Now, private companies and public companies have different regulations about how much information do they need to disclose to public. Private companies have less regulations. On the other hand, the public companies have more compliances. Public companies are required to disclose all the financial information to the public. Why? Because public has invested money in these companies. They are the shareholders. They are the part owners of the company. Therefore, all the public companies have to disclose their financial results, their operating results on their websites, so that all the general public can look at those financials and then take their decisions with respect to, do they want to stay invested in the company, do they want to exit the company, or many other decisions that they want to take. So I say that this point is more important because we are in the course on financial accounting, and the disclosures in the financial reports, how those disclosures are to be made. There are also formats for that, standard formats for that as well. So just to sum up this slide, I'm saying private company and public company are different. They're governed by different regulations. The key difference being public companies have to disclose much more compared to the private company. Okay, now let me also quickly contrast these two forms of companies, private company and public company, to a couple of other forms of business, which is partnership and sole trader. And I show this on a continuum basically to say that a sole trader does small business and a public company does much more business. And partnership and private company, it is also possible that a partnership is doing higher business than a private company. That's possible, but typically this is how you would think about the progression. And let me take few parameters to say what is represented on this line. So resources, as you move from being an individual shopkeeper, small businessman, to having more people in a partnership, to a private company, to a public company where you have all the public which have subscribed to your shares become the investors. You have more resources as you go from left to right. You have more resources at your disposal. The complexity of the organization increases as you move from left to right. The compliances which you are required to do, they go up in number, in complexity. The disclosure requirements are much more for the company form of business, the size of organization, and of course the need for accounting. That's where the course comes in. Need for accounting for larger businesses becomes much more, because you have so many resources, you have legal responsibilities as well, you have disclosure requirements as well, and that's where the whole system of accounting comes in and fills this need, fills this void where the companies have to make sure that they follow the procedures, processes, compliance, and various standards with respect to preparing the financial statements and disclosing the financial results. So finally, a couple of minutes on how do you identify if a company is a public company. I told you one method. You look at the name. If the name says Reliance Industries and Limited, that means a public company. If the name says Reliance Industries Private Limited, then it's a private company. There are a couple of other things that you could do. Quickly go to website of any company and you would see an investor relations tab. And this is true for typically public companies. In order to identify any public company, go to the website, see if there is an investor relationship tab. They can call it something else as well, but investor word is actually quite prevalent. And then you have all the financial report, shareholder information, and so on. Okay, you can click on financial reporting, and then you could look at the financial statements. Another test that you could do is you could ask this question: is the company's shares traded on stock exchange? Now, without addressing what is stock exchange, what is trading of shares and so on, let's not get into that. If a company's shares are traded on stock exchange or listed on stock exchange, it's a public company. Most public companies, almost all public companies, have their shares on the stock exchange. You can simply Google it and find a list of the stock exchange listed companies. So just do that and you'll have a list. There are different ways of finding that out. All right, that's it in this video. I wanted to bring you up to speed on what is a company and what is a private company, what is a public company. I'll see you in the next video.